Good day, welcome everyone today to the committee meeting. Reminding members at the meeting it recorded and uploaded to YouTube. Also, just to confirm, at Councillor Woodward is no longer a member of the committee following the change of political balance. We have one apology so far from Councillor Turner. Any more apologies? Now, minutes of previous meetings. Can I have a mover and a seconder for them? Councillor Klutzman and Councillor Bain. Can we take a vote, please? Nothing. That's. Anyone got any declaration of interest? No. So we go on the first one on the audit report 2023 and 2024. What will be handed over to Lucy, Lauren.
Thanks, Chair. So the Auditor's Annual Report is our kind of completion document for the 23-24, and it is financial statements audit, and it is a public facing document, so we'll go on the council's website alongside your audited accounts. But I am pleased to say that we did issue an unqualified audit opinion on the accounts on the 20th of December last year, and that means that we do consider that your accounts give a true and fair representation and are materially correct. I won't go through a lot of detail of the report because you will have seen it all previously in the audit findings report, which set out all of our findings throughout the financial statements audit. But the main thing in here that you haven't seen before is the value for money commentary that I had shared with Joe prior to signing the audit opinion, but this is going to be the first time that you, as those charged with governance, will have seen that. The purpose of that is just to give a commentary on the arrangements that the council has across three areas. So the first being financial sustainability, secondly, the governance arrangements, and finally, how you achieve value for money through economy, efficiency, and effectiveness in the use of the resources that you have. So I am pleased to say that whilst we have made recommendations, we don't consider that there to be significant weaknesses in the council's arrangements. And as such, we haven't made any key recommendations or commented on them in our audit report. All of the recommendations have been raised and discussed with Joe and shared with Stephen, I believe, and we've had management responses to all of them, one of which I can see has been taken on board today because it was around Chief Exec representation at Audit Committee. So I know that management are taking those seriously. I probably also should just draw your attention to the fact that we have had to issue a delayed certification on our audit opinion. So whilst the audit is concluded and we've signed your audit report, we do have a requirement to the National Audit Office to contribute towards the whole of government accounts. Now, ordinarily, you would be below the threshold because of the size of the council, and we wouldn't have to do any additional procedures. But due to the low level of local authorities that have been signed off, there is the potential that the National Audit Office will ask for a few additional checks to be done for us to report into them. So until we've done that, we can't certify our audit as closed. So I will be keeping in touch with Joe, even though your new auditors will be taking over for the 24-25 period. So as far as I'm concerned, there aren't any kind of big ticket items to bring to your attention, but I am happy to take any questions you've got on the report or on the audit process throughout the last year. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, anyone got any questions? Chris?
What's the difference between an other recommendation and a key recommendation?
So we do receive formal audit guidance notes which inform how we have to undertake our value for money work. Now, those guidance notes say that if we identify a significant weakness in your arrangements, that will lead to a key recommendation being made. And a key recommendation would actually feature itself within my audit opinion and it would stand out as a weakness in arrangements that needs to be addressed. Another recommendation is what we'd consider best practice. So something that we think you could improve upon but wasn't sufficient to warrant a significant weakness.
Can you give an example of that, what that means?
Yes, I can. So if we look at the financial sustainability as an example, we have assessed your arrangements there and we do think that the arrangements that you have are sufficient and what we would expect of a council given the economic environment, the funding reform, the unknowns that exist at the moment. We think the council is doing everything that it can to have the right arrangements in place. The medium-term financial plan, however, does acknowledge that there is a reliance on reserves, I think in 27-28. So we have made another recommendation in this instance that whilst we think it's sufficient at the moment, in the future there will be a need to address that underlying deficit that's leading to the use of reserves. So that would be an example, or another one might be we've made a best practice recommendation that the Chief Exec attends some audit committees. That wouldn't constitute a significant weakness in itself if that wasn't happening, but we think it's best practice for that to happen in line with the SIP for guidance.
You want to respond?
Can you just explain to me the reason for the delay in certification again? I'm not sure I fully understood that.
Yes, of course. So you will probably have heard of the phrase whole of government accounts, and the National Audit Office issues its audit opinion on the whole of government accounts. So all auditors who audit a public sector body are told at some point within the process whether we would be considered a kind of a significant component for them based on size. So you tend to find the larger unitary councils or larger NHS bodies are above that threshold, and they then have to report their detailed audit findings to the National Audit Office so they can consolidate that information to give their overall opinion on the whole of government accounts. District councils ordinarily do not come into that because they're below the threshold. But given that there's quite a low number of local authorities that have received audited accounts in the last few years, as we all know, they have got less of a pool to choose from. So they're keeping it open and saying we may actually want to look at or get information from smaller organisations to feed into that whole of government accounts process. Has that answered your question?
Councillor Doyle?
I've got a question for clarification, really. Excuse me, because I'm having to use cheap reading glasses to look down, and when I look up, it gives me a bit of headache. So, I was reading here around the governance side that CIPFA guidance sets out about the Chief Executive as being one of the regular attendees in the Audit and Governance Committee, and I'm pleased to see that you've agreed to attend. You might regret that in the future, but the question I'd ask is how long has that been in the guidance, and why has it took so long to be enacted? Thank you.
I'd have to come back to you on a set date of when that came in, but given that we only took over as your auditors for 23-24, I can't really comment on the thought process prior to that, but I can come back to you with the date of when that came into the guidance.
Any more questions? Councillor and
Hi, thank you very much for it. I think it was a good report. I actually enjoyed reading it. Thank you very much. So, might be a silly question, this, but how often do you audit TBC in a year? What sort of frequency of audit? Is it just once a year, or is it during the year, please?
Yeah, so our function as external audit is to review the financial statements. So that happens once they have been produced, which tends to be between June and September. However, we do interim work and we do planning work. So whilst the majority of our work is focused on your year-end position, we do work with the council all year round.
Fine. Now I understand exactly where you fit into it, in a sense that you are looking specifically at that particular element. I get it. Thank you very much. So my next question, really, if I may, Chair?
yeah.
Is that okay? It's related. I think we would all agree, and we've had much head scratching about the budget going forward, and you've noted at page 24, with recommendation number 1, about developing the financial stability plan. I think it's really, really important for all of us that plan is successful and is implemented well, it is a proper plan and it's implemented successfully. So my question to you is, will you be auditing against that plan in future reports?
Sorry, unfortunately this is ASEC's last attendance at Audit Committee, given that your new auditors, Bishop Fleming, are taking over for 24-25. But I do know that they will read our recommendations and track against them. So they will be looking at that financial stability plan as part of their value for money assessment, I would have thought.
I think it would be important to include it in their scope of work, because, again, forgive me, that I read references that you audit in accordance with SIPFA and all this sort of stuff. I'm not sure what is included or what's not included. If that's an optional thing, I'd like it to be included if possible. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Is that okay? In going through it, I picked up answers along the way. So yes, page 20, I recognised under recommendation 2, there seems to be, and has been reported to this committee in the past, difficulty, particularly in the recruitment and retention of those staff that we as a committee will rely on to help us get the answers. I see there has been acceptance of that recommendation to do a piece of work to look at how that could be applied to TBC. Massively welcome that, and I think that's an important thing to do. I did read the accompanying document with it. It did make the case quite strongly that the success of all councils is going to be reliant upon having those skilled staff to help provide the answers and guide that away. So that's just an observation. My question really is, maybe it's not your place to answer, it might be somebody else to answer. It's page 31. It talks about the risks of not spending the Future High Street Fund by March 2025. Now, I know it says that there's only a relatively small amount to be spent after that. I think 695k or maybe less, might be just my fiction of my memory. My question is, and it might be to others, is do we know what the risk is of not spending that money, and what provision has been made to deal with that risk?
Thank you. I know that the team have been in dialogue with MHCLG with regards to the plans to spend all the Future High Street Fund grant, and they are working very hard to spend all of that as far as they can by the 31st of March. As I understand it, this 186k, which might have to be reprofiled, I don't think they're too concerned or worried about that, because it's relatively small in terms of the overall grant pot, which was over £21 million. I'm not quite sure of the latest position on that, but that was certainly my recent understanding in terms of that monitoring.
Sorry, just to add to that then, Joe, I think we'd said that because the council have put money into the scheme as well, we would use the Future High Street Fund money first and then use the council money. So the money will be spent within the timeline that we've agreed with MHCLG. Yeah.
It actually relates to page 33 when it talks about the local strategic partnership. I think it's massively important, personally, and I very much believe in working together. That's my sort of ethos anyway. But I think, and maybe it's not for here, but I think I would like to understand what the benefits are that we're looking to get out of that. Effectively, what I'd like to do is to make sure we're getting the benefits out of that partnership that we think we should be getting out of that. I think we need to be on top of that as a relationship. Otherwise it's just a name rather than actual some real things coming forward. So that's just my view. I'm not sure that's a question, but that's just an observation maybe.
Okay, any more questions? I do welcome out many questions you like, because to be honest, we need to actually look at things. So, I'll read out a recommendation to endorse the report with the comment made. Can I have a mover? Councillor Bain and a seconder and Councilman. Can I vote on it, please? And gone through. The external auditors can leave it in which to.
Thank you.
We go on to the internal audit program upgrade.
Thank you, Chair. I was a bit previous then, wasn't I? So, for those who don't know me, I'm Rebecca Neal. I'm standing in for Andrew Wood. I'm interim support for you for the next 6 months until June. I think as a committee now we've had some difficulty in trying to recruit to that post, and hence, indeed, Councillor, the point you just made. So I'm stepping in. I was previously Head of Audit and Governance with you 3 years ago, so I do have some experience of you, and it's great to be working with you all again. So for those of you who don't know me, quick introduction there. So in terms of the report in front of you now, this is the Internal Audit's routine quarterly progress report. So this is the outturn as at December. So I joined you in January, so we're very much looking back on this one, folks. But what you'll see is not too much of a good news story, but we're working on it. So you'll know that in terms of internal audit, it's very much about achievement of the plan, so that I'm able to give you an assurance opinion at the year end. At the end of December, we were at 35%. Now, as you know, the audit section has been blighted with some sickness, and also we've had our resources directed into non-planned activity, which sometimes does happen. As at where we are today, we're at 47%. Target is 90. I'm pedalling hard, is all I'll say to everyone. So it is in our sight. So just to let you know that. We do have BDO, who are our contracted audit provision, so I am able to pull on that contract to bring in extra resource should we need it to bring those audits over the line. But I think for those of you who know me, know that we like to achieve an audit plan, and I've never not achieved one yet, so I don't want to break any ground here. So that's where we are in terms of performance. Follow-up, I know, is a subject that's close to members' hearts here in terms of those audit recommendations. And as Councillor Wells has said, in terms of the external audit actions, it's making sure that those are followed up. And absolutely, that's as a committee where you need to seek assurance that those recommendations that your audit teams, both internal and external, are given are being fully implemented by those managers out there. Your follow-up stats here aren't looking bad. I've had some experience in other local authorities who would actually give their high teeth to have the sort of stats that you're outturning. So you've gone from 47 at the 1st of April to 34, a drop in 13 or 28% reduction in those recommendations coming down. I would just give a small health warning with this. This is managers self-reporting of those recommendations. because we've had that issue with capacity, what we would do is verify, Audit would verify that those recommendations have been implemented. That process is being put in this quarter, so we're back on track with that, folks, but it's looking good. Now, at your last committee, I believe you wanted the managers with the overdue high priority actions to be before you. That will be Joe and myself. I'm taking the business continuity action for any questions on that for you folks, as Paul Weston wasn't able to make this meeting. So we're covered in terms of those, but you've got 5 that are at page 69 of your pack, if you would like to.
Excuse me.
Sure.
Last time round, we noticed that 2 assistant directors seem to have an awful lot of the outstanding issues, and we wondered whether or not they had been given an undue workload, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Will you be feeding anything back to us on that?
Certainly, Councillor Couchman, I can give you that information. We can break it down to in directorate. Apologies, coming in new. It's
Yes,
getting very much what you want in terms of management information. But what I would say to the committee is that your audits tend to be very much financially focused. We're not accountants by trade, by accident. So unfortunately, Joe will end up having quite a lot of those actions, as I say, just because of the nature of our work. So primarily it's financially focused, but also based on risk. So if you do see a leaning towards your finance directors, that's probably no accident, is all I would say, Councillor. But certainly, I mean, I was talking to the chair, we can look at how you want that information going forward, which is, you know, how it works best for you as a committee, really. So happy to serve. Let me know what you want on that one. So that's it on follow-up. The other thing I'd say about this report before I'll open for questions is you might be familiar with the public sector internal audit standards. So those standards now have moved on. We're now under global internal audit standards, so they're going to be introduced as at the 1st of April. So I'm going to be doing a gap analysis for you just to confirm that we are still compliant for the 1st of April. Good news is that most of the things within the PSIAS have been carried forward into the global internal audit standards, so I think we should be okay, but that gap analysis needs to be done, so I'll bring you the outcome of that, I think, to your March meeting. And I'll stop there because I'm talking too much and I need a drink. Questions, please.
What happens if we don't meet the target? What happens if performance doesn't improve sufficiently? What happens?
Thanks, Councillor. An action plan as always. Although CIPFA have done the homework on this, and I think the difference between the PSIAS and the Global Internal Audit Standards, the GIAS, we'll have to have a new acronym, I guess, with it, is really it's aligning your audit plan to your strategic objectives, which is an obvious thing to do anyway. So we'll be doing that. And there's lots of other stuff around integrity and objectivity of your audit staff. So again, it's things, the Nolan principles and all of the sort of good governance stuff that you would expect. So I think CIPFA are very much hopeful that PSIAS covers it. For yourselves, you've had external accreditation of PSIAS, I think, a year ago. So I'm hoping it's going to be just a sort of drag and drop, really, in terms of checklist. But there's nothing auditors like more than a checklist. And our own profession has done that for us in spades, really.
Any response from that?
Not really. I mean, that's encouraging up to a point. But I'd like to know, because March is really getting quite close to April, isn't it? It's fairly close. Are we going to get sufficient notice to respond if it isn't going to make it? I guess is my...
Yeah, certainly, Councillor. I need to do the piece of work, so I don't want to preempt anything. I think all the indicative signs are that we should be okay, but I need to do that bit of work. But it will. I'm on it. It's something that I'm going to be doing next week, so it will be ready for your next committee meeting, which I think is the 19th of March. So you'll have that assurance just prior to that sort of 1st of April implementation date. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you. The 19th of March is my birthday. That would be a nice present. Thank you.
Councillor Kutzman. Houseman.
On page, I think 65, you've got an orange or an amber warning for cyber security. Now, obviously, that is something that is really at the forefront, I think, of everywhere. I know I'm a chair of governors at school, and we are always sort of like aware of this as well. We're only amber. How do we get to green?
Good question, Councillor. So in terms of amber, where we have a limited assurance report, it's an amber on our traffic light system. If you have no assurance, you become red. So that's just how that traffic lights work. And I think reasonable and substantial, you'll be green. So that's how the traffic lights work. Now, as part of your follow-up, where you have a limited assurance report, we do an audit follow-up pretty quickly. But we have to wait until the recommendations or the action plans associated with those recommendations, the time has lapsed so we can go in, because there's no point in going in when recommendations haven't been implemented yet. I checked this today with the auditor. I think the last date of implementation on the cyber risk was risk report was December. So we've got it now planned to do that follow-up audit. So of the recommendations that have been made within that report, we'll be following those up as an audit section, and then we'll be reporting back to you whether it's still limited, i.e. no action has been taken, but I don't think that's the case, or we can have a revised opinion on that, so we can bring it up into the green, which is where you would want it. Trouble with cyber security is this changes so quickly, and there's always new threats, and I don't think there are many. I think, and I'm not an IT audit specialist, we employ those because they are. I think it's such a moving feast that I don't think there are many organisations that do get a green with cyber, because I think there's just too much risk attached to it. So we do what we can within, we've had the review, which is exactly where we would want to be, that's where the risk is, and then it's about following that up and then providing assurance back to yourselves as committee members that risk has now been mitigated.
Thank you.
Any response? No. Any other questions? Councillor.
Page 68, again another amber, and it's about business continuity, and I think it's something that is very dear to all our hearts, because we want Tamworth to be a vibrant town, and therefore where it says that, we've got inadequate controls to support business continuity, what are we doing about it, or what you said?
Thank you, Councillor. Another good question. In terms of business continuity, I spoke to Paul Weston, who's the Assistant Director for Assets, who's leading that piece of work today. And I've got some first-hand experience of the trajectory of this work. Basically, obviously councils are governed by the Civil Contingencies Act. So if there's an emergency, we have an emergency plan, and then underneath that you have service plans where we've got the business continuity aspect. So it's you have the disruption, and then it's how you recover. Well, business continuity is how we're recovering those operations. So I think with the audit, having read it, and a bit before my time here, it was very much about ensuring that those business continuity plans were up to date, and that there was a meeting of heads of service to discuss them and have critical challenge in effect of each other. Those meetings is one of our high priority actions. So they're now about to take place. I've had a meeting invite myself as a head of service for audit. So that's happening before the end of this month. I've also had the business continuity plan for audit, and I've had a critique from our Civil Contingencies Officer who works with us. So all of the things within that audit are now being put in place. So it's about having regular reviews, it's about having those sort of roundtable discussions, so that, obviously there's a lot of interdependencies when it comes to business continuity, IT being one of those key ones. So all of the collective good practice that you'd expect in terms of business continuity is now sort of motoring. So again, this is another report. It had limited assurance. We will be following it up. So I'll be able to bring bring you that assurance back. But I can say firsthand, and having spoken to Paul and having seen the email invites and my own business continuity plan coming through with comments for me to amend, that process is now in place.
Okay, any more questions? No. So, okay.
You've probably heard I'm very keen on sort of working together and learning lessons and all the rest of it. I understand you work for Lichfield as well, don't you? So you're able to have an insight as to how we stack up against Lichfield and perhaps learn lessons between the two. I'm just wondering if you've had any observations so far that you might like to share with us. Maybe that's a thing we could learn from at the moment.
It's a bit too early, isn't it?
It's a bit too early.
Too early. Well, no, a very unfair councillor. No, I think having worked with both organisations for a while, I mean, in terms of internal control and risk management and all the stuff that is me, governance, etc., you know, both authorities are very good. And I've been to a few authorities, so I am able to bring that context and other organisations too. And I would not name and shame them because that would be totally unprofessional. But no, it's you know, particularly in terms of your you know, your follow-up recommendation status. I understand what the committee is wanting to do here, but you know, it's not an issue for you. But I'm you know, it is good practice that you're doing what you do in challenging those managers, absolutely, and it's a great thing to do. But yeah, it's you look at your assurance landscape, folks, is what I would say. Look at, and you know, as Councillor Couchman has indicated in terms of where the green lights are, you don't have too many. You haven't got any reds. You don't have too many ambers. You're mostly green. So your assurance landscape's looking pretty good. So I think that should, as councillors, give you some comfort in terms of how things are being managed.
Thank you.
Any more questions? No, I've got a small one. Are you happy with roadmap what you have on for the internal audit?
So, Councillor, in terms of the future of internal audit for yourselves, is that what you mean?
No, I mean based on what we've done now. Are you happy with how the roadmap was made? Like, what you've done something different, or added something, or?
Sorry, Councillor. So in terms of the
Internal audit.
in terms of internal audit and where you are at this particular moment in time, it's going to be hard work achieving that plan. I won't lie. We're looking at a 55% in 1 quarter to achieve that, but you know, it's doable. I'm setting the target in sight, and I think, you know, once we've got the global internal audit standards checklist completed as well, we'll be into your planning process for next year. So there's quite a lot to do for yourselves, but I think we're, you know, there's nothing to be concerned about at this stage.
Okay. Any more questions? No. So, the recommendation for the committee to note the report of the internal audit quarterly progress report, quarter 3. Can I have a mover? Councillor Bain and Councillor Huntman for the seconder. Vote. That gone through. Next is audit committee effectiveness. Back to you.
Me again, folks, sorry. So this is your annual committee effectiveness review. I say me again, but really it's over to yourselves. In terms of how this rolls, we have SIPFA have done a statement of good practice for us and a checklist as well. So this is something that we benchmark ourselves against. What you see in front of you is my interpretation based on evidence as to where I think you are in terms of effectiveness. So I think that would be the first thing I would say, councillors, is do you think that that feels about right in terms of the checklist, I think, at Appendix 3? And where there are gaps in that checklist or areas for improvement, let's say, there is an action plan that's within the main body of the report. So it's a twofold thing, really. And then, of course, you've got the SIP for guidance, which you'll all be familiar with at Appendix 1 and 2 of the report. So I guess the first question is, does the checklist feel about right with how the committee operates? You'll see within that, in terms of my assessment of it, there are tweaks that we can make to the terms of reference for the committee as a first. You've obviously got the question of independent members and whether we feel that that is an idea for us. Now, at the moment, it's SIPFA's best practice recommendation. However, again, a sort of weather warning on this. I think it will become legislation at some point when the government legislative timetable allows. Councillor.
Just on that, the problem we've got is we can't get anybody. Not that we don't want anybody, but we can't get anybody.
It can be difficult, Councillor, this, and I think sometimes because there is a lot of requirements attached to the role that are, again, and that is in legislation. If you do have a co-optee to an audit committee, they can't have, for example, worked for a council for 5 years, can't have been elected members, not have any sort of contractual relationships. It's so that they are completely independent and seen to be independent as well. So I think sometimes getting someone interested, you can attract people who actually aren't able to apply. But Councillor, it can be done. I've done it myself once before at Walsall. We managed to get a director of governance from the NHS. So sometimes it's about tapping into other public sector bodies who do have that expertise. So it can be done.
I'll take your word for it, but it's kind of, you're asking for somebody to show an interest in local politics and the council who isn't actually interested in local politics or the council. It's a bit of a odd one. You'll have somebody who has no interest in the subject, so it's difficult to find somebody. Not that I'm saying it's impossible, and I like your idea about using somebody from another organisation if they're willing to do it. But with the Joe Public, if they show an interest in either political or any of the political parties, then it excludes them from the role.
Through you, Chair. I mean, it does, but our audit committee is apolitical, I would say, and that's under our SIP for code of practice. So I think what we want is someone who is, interested in local democracy, interested in Tamworth. That's where we need to be.
I think I'll let it go there. I do remember our conversations.
Been a bit new to the game. I just put my slight take on it. I actually think that what the committee needs to do is to try to actually recruit somebody who's actually not interested in politics at all. I think we've already identified, I think in previous discussions, a key risk. We've talked about cyber security. We want somebody who can help advise us or provide additional expertise in the areas which we feel we are at greatest risk. I believe, anyway. It's just my thoughts.
Councillor Cutsman.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, I was ill right at the beginning of the year and therefore missed the only training that we've had. And I think I have got previous experience of being on this committee many years ago, but obviously everything changes. I would benefit, and I'm sure other members would benefit from regular, maybe half-hour training, like planning does every now and again, updates. And I'm wondering whether sometimes it might not be advantageous if we had a pre-meeting where we could actually ask the questions and also be informed about some of the questions we should be asking, because otherwise, you know, like sometimes we've ploughed through all the paperwork and it's not the most interesting of reads. I appreciate, you know, for some people it might be, but if you go through it all, and I'm not saying that we should be told what to look at, because that's not our role at all. We should be telling you what we should be looking at. And the other area I would like to see is who chooses what internal audit actually audits, and why don't we have a say in that beforehand? You know, rather than you present what you're going to look at, and then we may have politically, and I know it's non-political, but, you know, there might things that come up during the course of each year that we actually want to focus on. For instance, the business development plan or security or whatever, which, you know, we're not getting that input.
I can answer one part of this. From my understanding, the plan, it ought to audit us entirely. We can make acts for them to look in certain areas, but it ought to audit us. But another part where you say, oh, you want to look in certain areas, that's something that what I want to do anyway, outside of the internal audits. So like, you've got areas where we want to look at, bring them up, because that's one thing I want to do. Because we should be looking at a wider governance. On the pre-meeting, it's something we need to think about.
Thanks, Councillor, and training, absolutely. You're right, we need to look at that, and it was something that was brought out in the peer assessment as well. So you'll see sort of the joining the dots between the peer assessment recommendation and what we've got within the recommendation action plan here. So what would be useful is there is a skills matrix, and I'm going to send that round to yourselves as members, because you're absolutely right. For the point of having training, you do need to have that. So I need to understand where your skills are now and what's lacking. And also, if we are going to appoint an independent member, it's useful to see where our skills are on the committee and where those skills gaps exist, because then we can target our sort of recruitment towards that. In terms of the audit plan and the planning process, it's quite a technical process, Councillor, this. It's mainly, and as our the internal audit function mirrors actually what the audit committee do, so that we're there to give an assurance opinion on the internal control, risk and governance system. So our audit plan is primarily based on the council's risk systems. So what you see in the strategic risk register is where our audit resources need to be targeted. The reason for that is that there are not many audit resources, so where we do audit, we need to make sure we're applying those to the areas of greatest risk. There's no point in fiddling about trying to audit petty cash anymore, those sorts of things. But you do, as a committee, have the opportunity to challenge the audit plan, and you'll have that coming to you in March. But the best thing you can do when you're looking at that audit plan is saying, is it hitting the council's key risks? There will be some financial audits that we do, and we do those on a routine and regular basis. But that's what the audit plan is about. And as I say, and it's to mirror what the audit committee does, which is to seek assurance that those key risks are being mitigated. So you will have an opportunity to comment, and you will have an opportunity to put forward any suggestions and ideas that you have, Councillor. So don't think that you won't, and to be able to challenge in the right way. It is ultimately your audit plan to approve as well.
You want to come back to that, or any questions? Councillor Bain?
Thanks. This is an interesting discussion. I think when you look at things like recruiting members and getting people in from outside, what brings people into a committee is absolute clarity about what it's there to try and achieve. And compliance with a checklist is not the same thing as having compliance about what you're trying to achieve. And if you were to ask me now, describe to me in 3 sentences what this committee is trying to achieve, I'm not sure I could do it. And I'm not sure how many other people sat around this room can do it. So it does feel to me like that would be something, because I would find it easier to ask somebody to join a committee when I could say to them in clear, succinct terms, because it does this. How are we going to get to that point? please don't say, I know you love checklists, and by the way, I love your faith that this is a non-political committee. I really enjoyed that. Thank you.
Best practice, apolitical audit committees. Councillor, we need to look at training for yourselves, I think. So, look, it's a takeaway, it's within the action plan. So, if you could gratefully complete the skills matrix for me, we can get on to that. To go back to the report, though, how are you feeling about the checklist? Is there anything that you would want to add to? So, in terms of the committee effectiveness checklist, or do you feel that it's landing about right for yourselves?
Sorry, can I just ask clarification? I looked through it.
Councillor, you're on page 151 of the self-assessment. So, does that clarify?
Yes, no, I'm in the right place.
Yeah. So where I've ticked fully complies, when this checklist came to you last year, you got a lot of ticks in the fully complies boxes. So I'm doing that on the basis that nothing has changed too much, but where evidentially, i.e. your terms of reference do not match up now to the sit for position statement on audit committees, I've put that we need a minor improvement on that because it will be amending, because you do have terms of reference, it will just be amending it up. But look, this is your checklist. This is, you know, I've been here 3 weeks. So it feels to me that it's right.
Sorry if I may come back.
Of course.
It feels to me that perhaps we need to revisit it, as you've said anyway, so that's fine. You know, I suggest to me that when we did this, certainly when I filled in my checklist, I was very new into the job, and ignorance is bliss, isn't it, in many respects. Perhaps having sat on a few of these committees now, I have a better understanding of perhaps the Kruger-Dunning effect has maybe affected people's judgment, maybe mine as well. So I think it would be useful to reevaluate that and see where we are and have an honest evaluation of where the committee sits. Thank you.
Councillor, I would note at bits what's sent out in email, but we didn't get any response from it. Councillor?
I found it very difficult to respond to the email because there was no real way that you could sort of elaborate on the answers, because you didn't want to be too critical, but at the same time you didn't want to offend anybody. I think it'd be a good idea if the members only sat down with the checklist and sort of pulled it apart. I think we might get more honest answers and more information that would be relevant to yourselves, rather than sit in a committee and sort of like don't want to look a bit foolish.
Yes, being recorded.
Yeah. You know, I think it would be easier if we sat down and said, look, let's get real here.
I mean, we could set something up so we could do that. If you think that worthwhile. And that'd be okay with you as well.
Absolutely, councillors, it's your checklist to own.
Can I suggest that those that are interested take it away as a subcommittee and go and look at it? Put it forward as a recommendation.
Sorry, Councillor Doyle. So the recommendation is that we ask members to form a subcommittee to look at this. Yes, okay.
I'll second that, Chair.
Can I have a vote on it? Okay, that gone through, and we took that vote on it.
Sorry, Chair, can I just make a word? Just on that last item, would it be useful for members to indicate now if they want to be involved in that subgroup rather than us having to go away and follow up on members? So is there an indication of members who would like to be engaged or involved in that subgroup?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so go for it. Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so according to it, we've still got another recommendation to do. For committee notes report, for internal audit, no, for committee conduct for tax self-assessment, check date, penalty, and endure any action to improve effectiveness at PA. Appropriate. Any movers? So, Councilman, do a vote. Yeah, gone through.
Sorry, Councillor, just for clarification, are you moving the action plan, or are you going to wait for the action plan once you've had your sub-meeting? Because there may be other actions arising from it.
Yeah, because it does say endorses any actions to improve effectiveness as appropriate. So going forward, any recommendations that come from the subcommittee we can bring back
Right,
under
thank
that.
you. Thanks for the clarification.
Okay, next topic is for financial waivers from the interim executive director of finance.
Thank you. So, as part of the core function under terms of reference, the committee is empowered to maintain an overview of the council's financial guidance. One of the improvement recommendations included within Grant Thornton's auditor's annual report for 22-23 was that the council should report on the number and value of waivers to Audit and Governance Committee on a quarterly basis, and this is the third such report. The waivers approved during the third quarter of 24-25 are set out in Appendix 1. It is recommended that the committee note the waivers approved to the procurement processes as set out in the council's financial guidance. I'm happy to take any questions you might have. Thank you.
Andy?
Hi, thanks. I've just got really, a picky question really, is that probably my understanding of the waivers. Under page 164, there's a sum of £8,532. It says service area homelessness prevention grant funding. I think my question is why are grants in waivers? Why don't they go through the grant process? I don't understand that.
That is a good question. I'm not sure I've got the answer for you on that one. I think this is probably a historic thing. For a number of years it had gone through this process whereby it had been approved via a scheme of delegation rather than the grant route. I'm not quite sure why it was done that way. Pardon? Not 100 years, a number of years. A number of years.
My hearing aid
Any other questions? Councillor?
It's not about the waivers per se, but if you remember last summer we had an incident where the previous leader and chief exec had signed off 60,000 of reserves to so that the green bins did go up. The cost of the green bins didn't go up the previous year. Now, in the old days, there used to be a members' book, and anything that was done that was signed between the leader and the chief exec and that would be put in the leader's book, in the members' book, and members could go and look at it. And I don't think the members' book exists anymore, does it? Well, according to Councillor Oates, it doesn't. And I wondered whether, when we come to waivers, whether something like this should be in a confidential form where we can actually see it and see what's happening, so that those sorts of things don't happen again.
If I can just respond to that, it is something that we're aware of, that the processes around the scheme of delegation, and it's something that we are looking to review when we do the review of the Constitution later in the year, is to tighten that up and make sure we've got clear procedures around that.
So I would be better going the route of the consultation to the... what's the nerd? Constitution. So if I put something in towards that, as opposed to this committee, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine, Councillor.
Any other questions? Okay, a quick question. What are the limits on how much you can waiver?
Right, so under financial guidance, we have different thresholds for the routes of procurement. So anything over £5,000 should go through our electronic tendering portal currently. So this would be a process for if there was a valid value for money reason why we didn't go through that route. Then I, as the Interim Executive Director Finance, do have authority to waive those processes. But they should be the exception rather than the norm. And certainly where something requires under the legal framework to go out to tender, then it must go through that route.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor?
Is there a maximum amount that can go out to waiver through that electronic tendering?
No, there isn't a maximum as such. Within the public contracts regulations, there are certain thresholds whereby we have to comply with the legislation, which means we must tender those opportunities, and those thresholds are set out in the report.
Okay, any more? Quick Spain.
Yeah, just a quickie, just for my clarification, really. And 2024-15, I can see that the fire safety. I can understand why that's been done to comply with that. I didn't really understand the next one, 16. I didn't really understand undertaking very tight timescales to inform cabinet decision. I wasn't quite sure what that meant.
So that was with regard to the transfer of a commercial lease, which was recently undertaken. It was all done under confidential cabinet reports, but due to the timescales involved in having to come to a decision, that was one of the factors here with using the company we were already working with at the time.
Any follow-up? Okay. Any more questions? No. So we go to recommendation. That a committee notes that waiver approval to the procurement procedure that's set out in the council financial guidelines. Can I have a mover? And the seconder. Count. Vote please. Gone through, and we've gone to our next topic, Risk Management Quarterly Update, Quarter 3, 2024 and 25.
Thank you, that's me again. So this is the regular quarterly risk management update for committee for quarter 3 of the 24-25 financial year. So one of the functions of the Audit and Governance Committee is to monitor the effectiveness of the authority's strategic risk management arrangements. This report includes the actions taken to manage those risks and raises issues of concern that may impact the authority. So corporate risks are managed, identified and monitored by CMT on a quarterly basis. The corporate risk register has been reviewed and the risk scores and notes have been updated by CMT for quarter 3, and a copy of the current corporate risk register is attached at Appendix 1. The main changes which have been actioned this quarter include new risk control measures added to Risk 3, promoting community resilience and cohesive communities. These have been highlighted in yellow. Additional notes have been added to Risk 6, failure to meet climate change ambitions, meet net zero targets and plan for major weather impacts regarding the Council's actions to mitigate flood risks. A brief note has been added to Risk 8, inability to deliver economic growth, sustainability and prosperity in the borough regarding the recent acquisition of a shopping centre lease, including who the council is working with to mitigate these risks. The corporate risk profile can be seen in Appendix 2. The proportion of risks rated high has increased this quarter from 30 to 40%. This increase in the risk profile is due to risk 4.2, inability to meet social housing targets, deliver affordable housing and meet the requirements of the social housing regulations. This has a revised score of 12 in quarter 3. It was previously 8. The reason for the increase in this risk score is resources, as the support put in place for this project is currently temporary. The committee is asked to endorse the corporate risk register, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor.
Just a comment really, it shows that in every one of these reports the same areas of risk are being highlighted, like business and you know, that sort of thing. So it shows that there is a lot of continuity.
Yeah, I agree with that. Any other questions? Could explain.
Just an observation, really. I'm always concerned when I see organisational resilience as a warning against it. That worries me a little bit. I think we need to look a bit more closely at that in future.
Any other? I think there, from what I can see, there seem to be like cyber tend to be quite high, but information, what do they call it? Where was it? Information and data management, it tend to be a lot lower. It seems to be a lot of mixed match from what I can see. Because like, if cyber is so high, I would expect information and data management to be similar level, which is there any reason why it's not the same level? Because I would thought one would affect the other.
I think cybersecurity was pulled out as a specific risk on its own because of the importance it was felt, and the specific risk around, you know, the impact of cyber attacks, particularly in light of some of the, you know, the activity that has been going on that has impacted other organisations such as the NHS. It was felt that warranted bringing out as a risk in its own, and it is one of the higher ones that's cited in the global index of current risks.
I kind of get that, but I thought it would affect my data management and information, which well far more. because it like putting my information and data management at WITS from a cybersecurity. They're kind of linked in many ways. So I do wanting clarification.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand your point, and I will feed that back to the relevant AD. Thank you.
Any other questions? No, then we go to recommendation. The committee endorsed the corporate WITS strategy, and we insult that it's resulting on action taking place to manage the company most significant strategic WITS. Can I have a mover? Councillor Bain and Councillor Doyle at Sender. Can I have a vote, please? And that come through. Now, the next item, the Food High Street WITS update will be deferred to next month's agenda to do content or information. So we're going to go straight to Waregate and our standard conduct report from Monitor Output.
Thank you, Chair. The report this evening provides committee with an overview of the Member Code of Conduct complaints received by the Managing Officer. Under the Localism Act 2011, the Council is required to have in place arrangements under which allegations can be investigated and decisions made. The Council has established procedures for investigating allegations. These procedures were reviewed with the Council adopting the Local Government Association Model Code back in July 2024. Having effective arrangements for complaint handling ensures the Council meets its statutory obligations under the Localism Act. During the specified period, 5 official complaints were received, and these complaints were managed according to the Members' Code of Conduct processes. The number of standards complaints received remains relatively low, with a summary of the details included in the report, including the natures contained. Committee is asked this evening to endorse the contents of the report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions on it? No. We go straight to recommendation. For committee endorse the content of the report. Can I move that? Councillor Bain and Stephen Doyle. Thank you. Can I have a vote, please? Gone through. Now we go on to the next one. Compile. Comment, and campaign updates.
Thank you, Chair. The Assistant Director of People is unable to make it this evening, so I'll be presenting this report. So the report this evening provides an overview of the Council's policy and procedures for the comments, compliments and complaints policy. The policy was approved by Cabinet in August 2024, and it focuses on learning from complaints rather than the number, supporting a positive complaint handling culture and effective resolutions while adhering to the legislation requirements. The policy ensures a consistent procedure with defined level services and standards, offering multiple communication channels for customers to contact us about their concerns. It has a 2-stage complaint process, allowing an escalation to the Ombudsman where appropriate. Mechanisms are in place for the monitoring and reporting of performance, and these are reported through Corporate Scrutiny Committee and endorsed by Cabinet on a quarterly basis. Additionally, the leader of the Council and the portfolio holder responsible for housing, homelessness and planning are our members responsible for complaints. They have regular information about the complaints we receive and have handled these. The chair for this committee also receives the annual Local Government Social Care Ombudsman letter reporting on the Council's performance in matters that have been referred to them. The letter is issued annually in July, and a full report is presented to the committee in September or October of that year. The Housing Ombudsman Service only issues organisations with a letter detailing performance if 5 or more cases investigated are found to have service failure, maladministration or severe maladministration, and to date the Council has not been issued with such a letter. With the introduction of the Housing Complaint Handling Code and its statutory requirements, Audit and Governance will annually receive the Complaints Performance and Service Improvement Report, along with a self-assessment against that code.
It is asked the committee to endorse the contents of this report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? No. Countman.
Can I ask if we've had many compliments or complaints since we reopened the front desk at Marmion House?
Thank you for the question. I don't have that data. We've been open for about a week, so at the moment I don't have that data, but I can take that back with me as well.
Just to add to that, I mean, we do have the tablet that you see that captures the data. So, I mean, I think we will get some statistics coming through from that, and we can share that with you.
I understand that 200 visits plus.
Okay. Yeah.
A bit close politically, so can we keep it not political, please?
Take a point, Chair.
Any other questions? No. I don't have one. I think it's a good example of how we're looking at wider percent of governance, like Councilman Kutzman mentioned earlier, to look at other areas outside of audit. I think it's a good example of doing that. So I'm going to go to a recommendation at members endorse the content of report. Can I move that?
Yep.
And it won't. Can I second that? Councillor Bain. Can I have a vote, please? Gone through. And next is the audit and government timetable. Now, does anyone have anything they want to add or comment on it?
I just think about the training issues that we've raised. If we can fit those in, that'd be good.
Yeah, knows it. Anything else? Any other areas you want to look at? Councillor Bain?
Well, I'd repeat what I said earlier about clarification about the purpose of this committee and how we describe it. I think we do need a session to do that. It sounds obvious when you say it out loud, but it isn't once you start talking about it. So I think we need to do that.
Okay.
I'm also interested in how all these matrices are put together and different tables and how we're supposed to read them, because I can find that confusing.
I think that done training. So yeah, we definitely will need a training section. Is it possible to have a training section?
Can I just remind members as well, there are some training information on the Teams channel specifically for your audit and governance training. So it might be worth just updating and having a quick look at that under the documents, under your members channel on there, just for some clarity on information.
And if you were on looking at LGA as well for training resources, they do really good training. So any other thing? No. Okay. So I'm going to close the meeting and thank everyone for turning up.